Growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, I always believed my grandma was the one person in this world who truly understood me. She wasn't just grandma to me. She was my safe place, my anchor, my biggest cheerleader when the world seemed too heavy for a kid like me to carry. My parents were always busy. My mom worked double shifts at the hospital, and my dad was often away on construction jobs out of state. So naturally, I spent most of my time at grandma's house. From the outside, her little white cottage with blue shutters looked ordinary, the kind of house people pass by without a second thought. But to me, it was a magical place where the scent of fresh baked cookies drifted through the air, where old family photographs lined every wall, and where her laughter made even the darkest days brighter. She had this way of making me feel like I mattered more than anyone else. When I brought home a crayon drawing from second grade, she hung it up on her fridge like it belonged in a museum. When I stumbled nervously through my first piano recital, she clapped louder than anyone in the audience, whispering, "That's my girl," with a smile that could light up the whole room. She always told me I reminded her of someone, though she never said who. Sometimes she'd just stare at me, her eyes soft but sad, and then quickly change the subject. I never thought much of it back then. To me, she was simply the grandma who loved me most, the one who slipped me extra candy when my mom wasn't looking and who stayed up late telling me stories about her childhood. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have imagined, was that beneath all that love and warmth, Grandma carried a secret so heavy it shadowed everything she did. A secret that one day would come crashing down on me and change how I saw her forever. The first time I ever felt like her love for me was different came when I was 10. I was sitting at her kitchen table, eating apple pie, when my cousin, Lily, came running in. Lily was my aunt's daughter, 2 years older than me, and everyone always compared us. She had the perfect grades, the perfect manners, the perfect smile. Adults loved to say she'd grow up to do big things. That day, Lily leaned against the counter, smirking as she said, "Grandma, guess what? I got an A+ on my math test." My teacher even said I was the best in the whole class. I froze, waiting for Grandma to shower her with praise. That's what adults always did when Lily talked about her achievements. But instead, Grandma barely looked at her and said, "That's nice, dear." Then she turned right back to me, brushed the crumbs off my cheek, and said, "But have you seen how creative my girl is? She's an artist in the making." Lily's smile faltered, and she stomped out of the kitchen, muttering something under her breath. I should have felt bad, but instead, my heart swelled. Grandma chose me. Out of all her grandchildren, she chose me. Over the years, moments like that kept happening. If Lily got an award, Grandma found a reason why it didn't matter. If my brother scored a touchdown at football practice, Grandma would shrug it off and say, "Sports don't last forever, but talent does." But when it came to me, my drawings, my stories, even my silly jokes, she acted like I was the center of the universe. It was the kind of unconditional love every kid dreams of. And honestly, it kept me going through some really hard times. In middle school, when I was bullied for wearing thrift store clothes, Grandma was the one who hugged me tight and said, "They only pick on you because they see something special they'll never have." In high school, when I didn't make the cheerleading team and cried myself to sleep, Grandma told me, "You don't need to fit into their little boxes. You were meant to stand out." She was always there, always on my side. Which is why what happened after her death shattered me in ways I still struggle to explain. Grandma passed away this summer after I turned 18. I was getting ready for college, the first in my family to even dream of going. It felt like the start of something new, but at the same time, it was the end of everything I had ever known. She had been sick for a while, though no one told me just how bad it was. When I got the call from my mom, saying Grandma was gone, it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I cried so hard I could barely breathe. My chest ached, my eyes burned, and my whole world seemed emptier without her. At the funeral, people whispered about how strong she had been, how much she had done for everyone in the family. But all I could do was stare at the closed casket and think about how unfair it was. How could someone who had been such a constant in my life just disappear? I held on to the one thing I knew for sure, that Grandma had loved me more than anyone. That even though she was gone, I would always carry her love with me. So when the lawyer read her will 2 weeks later, I sat there expecting something, anything, that showed how much she had valued me. Maybe her pearl necklace, the one she wore every Christmas. Or her locket with the faded photo inside. Or even just a letter telling me how proud she was. But when the will was read, my name wasn't mentioned. Not once. Everything, her jewelry, her savings, even her beloved house, was left to my cousins, my brother, and my aunt. I sat frozen in my chair, my ears ringing as everyone else nodded and whispered, some even smiling. I couldn't believe it. I had been her favorite. Her girl. The one she always said was different, special. So why? Why did she leave me nothing? The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't even cry. I just sat there, numb, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the lawyer had read it wrong. Maybe she had left me something private, something no one else knew about. But the truth was darker than anything I could have imagined. And it all began the night I decided to sneak into Grandma's attic, searching for answers. That night, I remember the house felt colder than usual. My aunt had moved in temporarily, sorting through Grandma's things, but she had gone to bed early. I crept upstairs, my hands trembling as I pushed open the narrow attic door. The air smelled of dust and old wood, and the single light bulb flickered as I pulled the string. Boxes were stacked in messy piles, filled with photo albums, Christmas decorations, and decades of memories. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe a letter addressed to me. Maybe a hidden box she hadn't told anyone about. Something, anything, that would prove I wasn't wrong about her love. After hours of searching, my eyes landed on a small tin box tucked behind an old trunk. Inside, tied with a faded ribbon, were letters. Dozens of them, maybe more. My heart pounded as I picked up the first one, my name scrawled across the envelope in her shaky handwriting. But as I read the words inside, my chest tightened. Because instead of love, instead of the warmth I had always known from her, the letter revealed something else entirely. Something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The envelope shook in my hands as I slid the paper out. My eyes blurred with tears, but I forced myself to read every word. Dear Emma, it began. That was me. She'd written my name. My heart leapt with hope, but the words that followed didn't sound like the grandma I knew. You are so much like her. Sometimes it hurts to even look at you. I froze. Who was her? You smile the way she used to smile. You tilt your head the same way, and every time you laugh, I hear her voice echoing back at me. I know it isn't fair to you, but I cannot escape the memories. And sometimes, Emma, I blame you for what happened, even though you were only a baby and had no part in it. I blinked, rereading the lines over and over. My chest felt heavy, as if the air in the attic had thickened around me. Blame me? For what? The letter ended abruptly, signed with nothing more than Grandma. No explanation. No warmth. Just that one chilling admission that she sometimes blamed me for something I didn't even know about. My hands trembled as I reached for another envelope, then another. Each letter revealed pieces of a story I had never heard before, a story that seemed to circle around one person. My mother. The second letter was dated the year I was born. She shouldn't have done it, Grandma had written. She was too young, too reckless. And when the accident happened, I lost more than I could bear. I know she thinks she did her best, but her choices destroyed this family. And now every time I look at Emma, I see the same mistakes waiting to happen all over again. I dropped the paper, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. What accident? What choices? What did my mom do that could have destroyed everything? The third letter was worse. I try to love her. I do. But some nights I wake up screaming because I see it all again. The flashing lights, the sirens, the empty chair at the table. And then I look at Emma's face, and it's like the past has been dragged back into the present. I want to forget. I want to forgive. But how do you forgive the thing that cost you everything? By the time I finished, my whole body was shaking. The letters weren't meant for anyone else to see, I realized. They were private, her confessions, her grief poured out onto paper she never intended to share. And yet, why keep them? Why hide them in a box in the attic instead of burning them or throwing them away? Unless some part of her wanted me to find them. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, clutching the first letter to my chest. The words replayed in my head over and over. You are so much like her. Sometimes it hurts to even look at you. I thought about the way Grandma would stare at me sometimes, her smile fading, her eyes clouding over as though she were seeing someone else. I thought about how she never talked about my mom's teenage years, always brushing off questions with, "That's not important now." It all started to make sense in a way I didn't want it to. The truth was, Grandma had loved me fiercely, but maybe not for the reasons I thought. Maybe she clung to me because I reminded her of something or someone she couldn't let go of. Maybe her love wasn't as pure as I believed. Maybe it was mixed with grief and resentment so tangled together she couldn't separate them. And if that was true, then everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. The next morning, I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I went downstairs where my mom was sipping coffee at the kitchen table. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She had been grieving too, but when she saw my face, she frowned. "Emma, what's wrong?" I pulled the letter from my hoodie pocket and set it in front of her. "Did you know about this?" Her brow furrowed as she read. With every line, her face paled. By the time she reached the end, her hands were trembling. She set the paper down slowly, staring at it like it was a ghost from the past. "Mom," I whispered, my throat tight. "What accident? What is she talking about?" For a long time, she said nothing. Just sat there, gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Finally, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "I hoped you would never have to know." "Know what?" My voice cracked. "Grandma wrote that she blamed me. For something I didn't even do. You have to tell me what happened." My mom closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, tears were spilling down her cheeks. "It was your aunt," she said quietly. "Your Aunt Grace. She died the night you were born." The words slammed into me like a punch. Aunt Grace. I'd heard her name before, in hushed conversations, in old photos tucked into albums, but no one ever told me what happened. Whenever I asked, the subject was changed, and eventually, I stopped wondering. But now, staring at my mom's tear-streaked face, everything clicked. She was driving me to the hospital. My mom said, her voice breaking, "I was in labor with you." It was storming that night. The roads were slick, and there was an accident. A truck ran a red light. Grace. She didn't make it. I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. She was only 21, my mom whispered. She had her whole life ahead of her. And she was your grandmother's favorite. The golden child. The one she thought would carry on the family name. The one she trusted more than anyone. And when she died that night, your grandmother never forgave me. She said it was my fault. That if I hadn't called Grace, if I hadn't needed her, she'd still be alive. Her words blurred in my mind, mixing with the letters I'd read upstairs. "Every time your grandmother looked at you," my mom whispered, "she saw Grace. You have her eyes, her smile. And I think that's why she both loved you and resented you. Because you reminded her of what she lost." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the letters apart, to pretend I hadn't read them. But the truth was out now, and it was heavier than I could bear. Grandma hadn't just loved me. She had blamed me. For Grace's death. For the tragedy that tore our family apart before I was even born. And worst of all, a part of me wondered if it was true. If I hadn't been born, Aunt Grace would still be alive. My grandma would still be whole. My family wouldn't be shattered. It wasn't fair. I hadn't asked to be born. I hadn't asked for Grace to drive that night. But none of that changed the fact that my life had come at the cost of hers. No matter how much I wanted to deny it, the guilt clung to me like a shadow I couldn't escape. That day, I packed the letters back into the tin box and shoved it under my bed. I couldn't face reading the rest, not yet, but I also couldn't stop thinking about them. Because deep down, I knew there was more to the story. More than my mom had told me. More than Grandma had confessed in those letters. And I was determined to find out, even if the truth destroyed me. After that morning, nothing in my world felt the same. The walls of our house seemed thinner, like they were whispering secrets I was never meant to hear. Every time I passed by one of the old family photos on the staircase, smiling faces, holidays, birthdays, I couldn't help but look for Aunt Grace. She was there in some of them, her arms slung casually around my mom, her smile bright, her eyes alive in a way that made my chest ache. She had been real. She had existed. And she was gone because of me, or at least that's how it felt. I started noticing things I had missed before. The way my aunt avoided talking about her sister. The way my grandpa, before he passed, used to go quiet whenever Grace's name came up. The way my mom kept a box of old keepsakes in her closet but never opened it. And I realized something. This family had been living with her ghost for 18 years, and I had been blind to it. That week, I couldn't bring myself to go out with my friends. I ignored their texts, shut my phone off, and spent my nights staring at the ceiling, replaying the letters in my head. I thought about how Grandma had hugged me, how she had whispered, "You're my girl," while secretly writing that I reminded her of her biggest loss. I didn't know which hurt worse, the fact that she had loved me, or the fact that she had also resented me. But no matter how much I tried to push it down, a single question kept gnawing at me. What exactly happened the night Grace died? The details my mom gave me didn't feel complete. A storm. Truck. A red light. Too simple. Too vague. And if it really was just an accident, why did Grandma write that she couldn't forgive my mom? Why did she talk about choices that had destroyed everything? There was more. There had to be. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the tin box from under my bed and opened it again. The envelopes stared back at me like little white ghosts, each one holding a piece of the story I was desperate to understand. The next letter I chose was dated 5 years after the accident, when I was just starting kindergarten. "Emma is growing so quickly," Grandma had written. "She is bright and full of life. And sometimes I catch myself smiling at her in ways I didn't think I could anymore. But then she says something, or looks at me with those eyes, and I'm back there again, back in that storm, back in that hospital waiting room. If only your mother had listened to me that night. If only she hadn't insisted. Grace would still be here. We would all be whole." I frowned, reading the words carefully. If only your mother had listened to me that night. Listened to her about what? I rifled through the stack until I found another dated around the same time. "I don't know how to love Emma without resenting her at the same time. I see the innocence in her smile, and I want to protect her from everything. But I also see the consequences of your mother's choices. The truth is, she was too young, too selfish, and her mistakes cost us Grace. And one day, Emma will have to know the truth. She'll have to understand why this family has been broken since the day she came into it." My stomach turned. My hands shook. Grandma wanted me to know. She wanted me to grow up and discover all of this, to carry it with me like she had. That's why she hadn't burned the letters. That's why she had written them in the first place. And now that I'd started reading, I couldn't stop. The more letters I read, the more my mom's story began to crack. Grandma wasn't just bitter about the accident. She believed my mom had played a direct role in causing it. She begged Grace to drive her. She could have called anyone else, me, her father, a cab, but she insisted on Grace. And Grace, sweet Grace, never said no to her sister. That was always her downfall. She gave too much. And that night, it cost her everything. My hands tightened around the page. So that was it. My mom had called Grace to drive her to the hospital the night I was born. She could have chosen someone else, but she didn't. A wave of nausea hit me. Did that mean Grandma was right? Did my mom's choices really lead to Grace's death? I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think of my mom, the woman who had sacrificed so much for me, as selfish. But the letters painted a picture of a night filled with mistakes and regrets that had haunted my family ever since. And worst of all, they painted me as the reason it all happened. That night, I couldn't keep it inside any longer. I went to my mom's room, holding a stack of letters in my trembling hands. Tell me the truth, I demanded, my voice shaking. All of it. Not just the accident. What really happened that night? My mom looked up from her bed, startled. She saw the papers clutched in my fists, her face paling instantly. You've been reading them, she whispered. I nodded. And they don't match what you told me. Her hands went to her temples, her shoulders trembling as if she were holding back a flood of memories. You don't understand, she whispered. Then make me understand. My voice cracked, tears burning my eyes. Because right now, all I know is that Grandma thought it was your fault. That she thought you killed Grace. And that every time she looked at me, she saw the proof of it. Her face crumpled. She buried her face in her hands and let out a sob so raw it pierced through me. I didn't want you to carry this, she cried. I didn't want you to grow up under the weight of a ghost. You're my daughter. You deserve to live your own life, not be crushed by the past. Then tell me, I whispered, my voice shaking. Please. She looked at me, her eyes red, her face pale. And finally, she spoke. I was 17, she said, her voice hoarse. I was terrified. Your father wasn't there. He left the moment he found out I was pregnant. I didn't know what to do. Everyone was judging me, whispering about me. The only person I trusted was Grace. She was older, steadier. She always knew what to say. And that night, when the contractions started, I panicked. I called her because she was the only one I believed wouldn't hate me for it. The only one who wouldn't make me feel like a mistake. She wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. Mom told me to call an ambulance. She begged me not to drag Grace into it. But I couldn't bear the thought of strangers, of flashing lights, of everyone in town seeing me at my lowest. So I called Grace. And she came, like she always did. She drove me through the storm. And when that truck ran the red light, she choked, pressing her hand over her mouth. Emma, it wasn't just an accident. It was my choice. My choice to call her. My choice to put her behind the wheel that night. And I've lived with that guilt every single day since. Her words hung heavy in the room, pressing down on me until I couldn't breathe. It was true. Everything Grandma had written was true. And in that moment, I realized the heartbreaking truth. I wasn't just born into this family. I was born out of a tragedy that had broken it forever. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I understood why Grandma had left me nothing in her will. Because in her eyes, I was the living reminder of everything she had lost. And the more I thought about it, the more I began to wonder. Maybe I didn't deserve her love after all. The days that followed felt like I was living in a fog. I went through the motions, waking up, eating, pretending to study for college orientation, but inside, I was unraveling. Everywhere I went, Grace's shadow followed me. When I looked in the mirror, I searched my own reflection for the pieces of her Grandma had seen. The curve of my smile, the tilt of my head, the eyes that weren't really mine but hers. I kept hearing Grandma's words in my head. Sometimes it hurts to even look at you. And worse, my mom's confession. It was my choice. I didn't know how to live with that. At dinner one night, my brother Tyler noticed something was wrong. He was 2 years younger than me, still in high school, always joking, always eating twice as much as anyone else at the table. But that night, he stopped mid-bite and frowned. You okay, I pushed peas around on my plate, unable to meet his eyes. I'm fine. He snorted. You've been acting weird for days. Did something happen? Mom's hand froze on her glass. I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes, and I knew she didn't want me to tell him. But keeping the truth inside felt like it was choking me. So I whispered, "Did you know about Grace?" Tyler blinked. "Grace? And Grace?" I nodded. "Did you know she died the night I was born? That grandma never forgave Mom for it?" The fork slipped out of his hand, clattering against his plate. He looked between me and Mom, his eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" Mom's voice was firm, maybe too firm. "Tyler, that's enough. You don't need to." But I cut her off. "He deserves to know." Just like I did. The room fell silent, except for the pounding of my heart. And then, in a voice so small I barely recognized it as my own, I said, "Grandma blamed me for her death." Tyler's face twisted, confusion and anger colliding in his expression. "Blamed you? That doesn't even make sense." Mom buried her face in her hands. I swallowed hard. "I found letters. In the attic. She wrote about it, about how she couldn't forgive Mom, and how every time she looked at me, she saw Grace. She blamed me. She left me nothing in her will because she couldn't let go of what happened." The words spilled out, raw and jagged, cutting me as much as they cut him. Tyler's jaw clenched. No. That's insane. Grandma loved you. She loved you more than anyone." My chest ached. Did she? Or was it just guilt? Or resentment? Or both? He shook his head furiously. "No. No way. She came to every one of your art shows, every recital. She bragged about you to literally anyone who would listen. You can't fake that." I stared down at my plate. "Then why didn't she leave me anything? Why did she leave her house to you, her savings to Lily, her jewelry to Aunt Diane, and not even a note for me?" Tyler went pale. His mouth opened, then closed again, like he wanted to argue but couldn't. The silence stretched until Mom finally spoke. "Because she was broken," she whispered. "She never healed from losing Grace. And instead of facing her grief, she carried it like a weapon. She loved you, Emma. I know she did, but she couldn't separate you from her pain. And in the end, that pain spoke louder than her love." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold on to the memories of cookies in the kitchen and bedtime stories and the way Grandma's laughter filled every room. But the letters were real. The truth was written in her own handwriting. And no matter how much I wanted to forget, I couldn't unknow it. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I pulled the box out again. My hands shook as I reached for one of the last unopened letters, dated just a year before she passed. Emma is almost grown now. She's becoming her own person. Sometimes I wonder if she'll ever know the truth. Sometimes I wonder if telling her would free me or destroy her. Maybe both. But I don't have the courage. I've carried this bitterness too long. And though I love her, though I've tried to pour all of my heart into her, I can't erase the way she was born into this world. She is both my greatest joy and my deepest wound. And I don't know how to live with that. My breath caught. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and unstoppable. Her greatest joy. Her deepest wound. I wasn't just her granddaughter. I was her contradiction, the living reminder of everything she loved and everything she lost. No wonder she hadn't left me anything. No wonder I had spent my whole life feeling both cherished and different. Over the next few days, I noticed how the truth seeped into everything. When my cousin Lily bragged about inheriting Grandma's pearls, I felt a sharp pang, not of jealousy, but of rejection. Those pearls could have been mine, if only Grandma had seen me as worthy of carrying her legacy instead of the burden of her grief. When I walked past Grandma's empty house, now Tyler's by law, I felt a hollow ache. That little cottage had been my sanctuary. Now it was just wood and brick, stripped of the warmth I thought belonged to me. And when my mom tried to comfort me, I found myself pulling away. Because as much as I loved her, I couldn't forget what she admitted. She had chosen Grace that night. She had put her in the car. And part of me hated her for it. One evening, I found myself standing outside Grandma's cottage. Tyler was inside, sorting boxes, and when he saw me, He waved me in. You should take something, he said softly. Even if she didn't leave it to you in the will. You lived here as much as any of us. You deserve a piece of her. I walked slowly through the rooms, each one heavy with memories. The kitchen where she taught me how to bake cookies. The living room where we decorated the Christmas tree every year. Her bedroom, where she kept her perfume bottles lined up like soldiers on her dresser. And then I climbed into the attic one last time. That was where I saw it, an old photo album tucked under the same trunk where I had found the letters. Inside were pictures of Grace. Dozens of them. Her smile was radiant, her laugh captured in frozen moments that still seemed alive. And then I flipped to the last page. A photo of Grace holding a newborn. Me. My throat tightened. On the back of the photo, in Grandma's handwriting, were the words, "The night I lost one, I gained another." I don't know how to reconcile the two. I sank to the floor, clutching the picture against my chest. In that moment, I realized the truth. Grandma hadn't just loved me or resented me. She had done both, at the same time, every single day of my life. And maybe that was the real tragedy, not just Grace's death, not just the accident, but the way grief had twisted love into something so complicated it left scars across generations. I was her granddaughter, her reminder, her contradiction. And now, it was up to me to decide what that meant. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep carrying this weight alone. I had to face the rest of the family. I had to tell them the truth about Grandma, the letters, and the accident, even if it tore us apart all over again. The next Sunday, the whole family gathered at my Aunt Diane's house for dinner. It was supposed to be a chance to heal, to be together after losing Grandma, but the air was thick with tension. Everyone avoided eye contact as if grief had made strangers out of us. I sat at the end of the table, my hands clenched in my lap. The letters weighed heavy in my bag, the tin box tucked safely inside. My chest tightened every time I glanced at my mom, who hadn't spoken more than a few words to me all week. Tyler kept stealing worried looks in my direction, but I couldn't reassure him. I wasn't okay. And I couldn't keep the truth inside anymore. When the plates were cleared, I stood up. My legs felt like they might give out, but my voice was steady. I need to tell you all something. The chatter stopped. Heads turned. Lily frowned, annoyed at the interruption, while Aunt Diane raised an eyebrow. My mom stiffened instantly, her hand gripping the edge of her chair. I swallowed hard. It's about Grandma. And Grace. And me. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Aunt Diane sighed. Emma, not now. We're trying to have a peaceful night. I shook my head. No. This can't wait. I found something, letters. Letters Grandma wrote but never sent. And they explain why she left me nothing in her will. The room shifted. People sat straighter, their eyes narrowing, curiosity sharpening into suspicion. What letters? Lily demanded. I pulled the tin box out of my bag and set it on the table. The metal clanged against the wood, echoing louder than I expected. These? I whispered. I found them in the attic. My aunt reached for the box, but I held it back. No. You need to hear this from me first. I opened the first envelope and read aloud, my voice trembling as Grandma's words filled the room. You are so much like her. Sometimes it hurts to even look at you. Gasps. Shifts in chairs. My mom's face crumpled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I read another. If only your mother had listened to me that night. If only she hadn't insisted. Grace would still be here. The silence after those words was deafening. Finally, Aunt Diane slammed her hand on the table. Enough. You have no right to drag this out in front of everyone. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to meet her glare. I have every right. Because I've been living my whole life thinking Grandma loved me unconditionally, when in reality, she saw me as a reminder of everything she lost. She loved me, yes, but she also blamed me. And no one ever told me why. Tyler reached for my hand under the table, his grip steady. I turned to Aunt Diane. Did you know? Did you know she blamed Mom and me for what happened? Aunt Diane's face hardened, but her eyes betrayed her, glossy with tears she refused to shed. We all lost Grace. Do you think you were the only one who suffered? My sister was taken from me. Of course your grandmother was angry. Of course she needed someone to blame. And she chose me, I whispered. My voice cracked, but I pressed on. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't choose that night, that storm, that accident. But I've been carrying her love and her bitterness my whole life without even knowing it. And I won't carry her silence anymore. You all deserve to know the truth, even if it hurts. The room erupted. Lily pushed back her chair, muttering, "This is ridiculous. She's making herself the victim again." Tyler snapped, "Shut up, Lily. You don't know what it's like to find out your grandma wrote about blaming you for a death you weren't even alive to prevent." Aunt Diane hissed at my mom. "You should have told them the truth years ago." And my mom, my broken, grieving mom, just sat there with tears streaming down her face, whispering, "I couldn't. I couldn't do it." I slammed the letters down on the table. "Well, now it's done. Now you all know. And you can hate me if you want. You can think I was the reason Grace died. But I'm done living in the dark." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, to my surprise, Aunt Diane's face softened. Her shoulders slumped, and she let out a shaky breath. "You think I didn't know?" she said quietly. "You think I didn't see the way Mom looked at you? Half the time she adored you. The other half, she couldn't stand it. I saw it, Emma. But you were just a child. I never wanted you to feel the weight of it." Her voice broke. "None of this was your fault." Tears stung my eyes. "Then why did she write those things? Why leave me nothing?" "Because grief changes people," Aunt Diane whispered. "It twists love into something ugly." She lost her daughter that night. And no matter how much she loved you, she could never untangle you from that loss. Her words hit me harder than I expected, not because they hurt, but because they rang true. That night, after the chaos settled and everyone drifted out of the house, I stayed behind with my mom and Tyler. The letters were still scattered across the table, their words heavy in the air. "Emma," my mom said softly, reaching for me. "I need you to understand something. Your birth didn't kill Grace. My choices, the storm, that truck driver, those things took her from us. Not you. Never you." Her eyes burned with sincerity. "I know my mistakes set that night in motion. I've lived with that guilt every day. But you were the one good thing that came out of it. You saved me, Emma. Without you, I don't know if I would have survived losing her." My heart cracked open. I wanted to hate her, to hold on to the bitterness, but in her eyes, I saw only truth. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing. Tyler wrapped his arms around us both, and for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could survive this together. In the weeks that followed, I kept the letters, but I didn't let them define me. I tucked them into a box under my bed, not as a burden, but as a reminder of what grief can do when it's left unspoken. I realized something important. Grandma had loved me in the only way she knew how. Messy. Complicated. Twisted by pain. She hadn't been perfect. None of us were. But maybe, just maybe, her love was still real, just broken. And it was up to me to choose what to carry forward. The night before I left for college, I sat in my room holding the photo of Grace with me in her arms. I traced the handwriting on the back one last time. The night I lost one, I gained another. For the first time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a bridge. A connection between the past and the future. And I promised myself that my story wouldn't end in silence the way Grandma's had. I would live loud, live fully, live for both myself and the aunt I never got to meet. Because I wasn't just the reminder of a tragedy. I was proof that love can survive even the deepest wounds.